Hello and welcome into episode 113 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I'm your host, Mark Harris, joined by Eagles superfan and fantasy sports extraordinaire, Colton Dodgson, who
You're too
is
kind. You're far too kind.
who's definitely keeping it together this week. I'm sure he hasn't been stressed out at all. How's it
Yeah,
going?
it's strange, man. It started to hit me a little bit today. I saw a picture of Mahomes in the last Eagles Super Bowl pointing at Bradbury on the flag that,
The fateful flag.
iced the game, right? And the PTSD sort of came flooding back to me, and then the magnitude of this
Right.
opportunity has started to hit me a little bit today. Um Yeah, I it's a trip. And I wrote something for football guys that'll be coming out on Friday. I ranked the top 20 Eagles of the 2000s, right? And I I I opened it by saying this is their third Super Bowl in 8 years, right? But I don't think that really captures how absurd that is given everything that's happened between those 3 Super Bowls on
It's
this
been a
team,
roller
right?
coaster, yeah.
Like
And I feel like
everything that has happened.
last year might be the best representation of it because they're good and they make the playoffs, they have talent, but then there's just drama that
Well, that's how
yeah,
the last 2 coaching tenures have ended for the Eagles, right? If you
right.
look back at Andy Reid with that whole dream team squad underwhelms, and then there's expectations. They had a year together. They'll figure it out. 2012, they go 4-12. Andy Reid's fired. Same thing with Doug Peterson, that 2020 season. It seems like 4 wins is like the common denominator. But when you finish the way the Eagles did,
Yeah.
it looked like history was repeating itself. And that's why I've been a little anxious about this article because I had and I saw a little bit of feedback on my number 1 ranking. Who do you think I ranked number 1 on this piece,
Since
Mark?
2000 of the
Of the
Philadelphia Eagles,
2000s, the number 1 Eagle of the 2000s. Who do you think it was?
I'm going to guess you ranked it Fletcher Cox.
I did not. Fletcher Cox was 10.
Okay. Okay.
Number 1, the number 1 Eagle was Nick Foles.
What?
The number 1. Yeah, how is it not Nick Foles?
Was he even the best player on his team?
Well,
I guess it just
he
depends how you
outdueled
frame it.
Tom Brady in a Super Bowl. Nobody else has
No,
ever
that's
done that
true.
on the Eagles.
True.
But that leads me to my next point, though.
But with
Saquon
that
Barkley
logic, you
was,
do Brandon Graham because he caused the fateful fumble
yeah,
in the Super Bowl.
Graham was on the list too.
Yeah.
But I think sentiment creeped in quite a bit because
Yeah, that's
Nick
fair.
Foles has like he has a statue outside the stadium, man. Like
I
he's
hasn't even been
immortal.
10
He's
years.
immortal. I know.
Yeah.
It's
No, for
crazy.
sure.
But anyway, that was kind of a tangent. I ranked
Yeah.
Saquon number 3. That's also another thing that
Okay.
might, but like I ranked him number 3 because of this conversation we were just having about what happens when they fail to meet expectations. And history very well could have repeated itself. They started 2-2 even before that. There were rumors
Right.
that Nick Sirianni would be fired if he
Right.
took the Doug Peterson route and didn't fire his coordinators. And then Saquon just rushed for 2,000 yards and they're back in the Super Bowl. So anyway,
Yeah.
went off on
Where
a
do you have
tangent with
T.O.?
Super
Where
Bowl
do you have
week.
T.O.?
T.O. was number 6 for me.
Okay. Because T.O.
Donovan
and
McNabb was 7.
okay. Yeah. Like T.O. and Saquon. Like obviously Saquon's going to be there for more than 1 year, but as of this
Yeah.
point, like they've had very identical type seasons. So
No, I
yeah,
agree.
I'll be
They
interested
definitely
in
have
reading that because
similar.
there's a lot of guys and there's also a lot of weird cases like T.O., like Vic,
Yeah.
you know, like
Vic,
Wentz. I don't know
I
where you have
think
Wentz. Yeah,
Wentz was outside. I started with top 50. I was going to do my top
that's
50
it.
Eagles, and I ranked them all. I had all 50 of them
Wow.
ranked. I was ready to go, and then we're like, let's cut it
Jake
down to
Elliott,
20.
34.
No, I'm pretty sure I had him at like 34. That's a wild
He's made
guess,
some
but
big kicks.
no, he did. And he's the reason that the Patriots, well, I guess they would have had to score a touchdown anyway, but the reason the Patriots couldn't beat the Eagles on that
He's a
last drive.
reason. Yeah.
So and then that 63-yard kick, he hit the kick in the hurricane. He's got, or
All right.
hurricane wins, whatever. But
Yeah.
Yeah, check it out. It should be cool. It's so hard to do that, man. So many guys could be in that top 10. But anyway, it's Super Bowl week. All right. We can have this tangent. It was fun.
Fair.
Barkley's number 3, Nick Foles, number 1 Eagle of the 2000s.
Who's number two? Since
You really want to know
we're
more?
already,
It
yeah,
seems
why
like
not?
all right.
Why is it
I have
funny?
because I nothing. I have Brandon Dawkins number or Brand. That's sacrilege. I
Oh
was
my
looking at the
God,
picture of
Brian
Brandon Graham on
Dawkins,
my yeah, I was looking at the picture of Brandon Graham on my desk. I
Brandon
have a
Graham.
picture of him sacking Brady the sack fumble in the Super Bowl, and I just
Can you tell Colton's an Eagles
committed
fan for our 30 listeners out there? Did you know he's an Eagles
yeah,
fan?
I committed an atrocity by calling him Brandon Dawkins, but Brian Dawkins was number
Okay.
2. And then yeah, Saquon, Shady's number 4, and I went or no, I'm sorry, Kelsey's number 4,
Okay. All right.
and then I went Shady 5. So there you go.
That's cool. Well, no, to wrap this up, like I feel like the Super Bowl week has had very little buzz around it because it's not a matchup that like your average Joe NFL fan wants.
Yeah,
And because of the Luka trade. I mean, the Luka trade is just not like I don't know how. I mean, it's still
the
like
NBA trade deadline in general, man. The Jimmy Butler
yeah.
trade just went down. Like, there's a lot
No,
going
I know,
on.
but I feel like it's really the Luka trade is gobbled up.
No,
Like, it's
it's
still it's
probably
like 4
you're
days later and it's still like at top of mind because it's so
100%.
unprecedented.
It's
So
probably
unprecedented.
the most unlikely trade I remember ever like
Yeah. What's the
watching go
college
down.
football equivalent? It's like firing. It's like
College
someone.
football equivalent?
Yeah, it would be like Notre Dame firing Marcus Freeman or something because you have to like reach the title game, have a promising young trajectory. I'm
Yeah, I
sure
don't
Marcus
know.
Freeman doesn't
That's
have
a wild
type of
comp
vice.
to try to
Yeah,
make because the trades and everybody was trying to do the NFL comparisons and stuff. It's just so absurd. I
I heard
guess
someone say Jamar Chase for Mike Evans. I'm like, yeah, that's actually a pretty good NFL comparison.
yeah, that's not but you'd have to
But
attach like a third
yeah,
round pick to Evans or something. But
and
you
it's
know,
still like the nature of the game is different too. Yeah,
yeah, and now Luka's ineligible for that supermax because it's not
I
with the team
know.
who
No,
drafted
yeah,
him, and there's a lot of implications. The Lakers have their face now for the
it's
next
crazy.
however, like they weren't going to be in position
They
to go get
literally
a
just
guy.
got called up. It's like a remember when the Cardinals got DeAndre Hopkins because Hopkins was
Oh,
just
for
pissed off
David
at Bill
Johnson,
O'Brien,
yeah,
and then whatever the Texans' dumb GM was like, oh yeah, we'll just call up the Cardinals. You want to trade him for like it was like I don't forget what it was, like a second round pick or something, just nothing. Maybe even no, it was like
yeah.
less than that. Yeah,
No,
like
it
oh the
was the
Cardinals have D
second
Hop, great.
rounder and David
Okay.
Johnson for Hopkins,
Oh, that's right,
which
David Johnson.
at that point, David Johnson had a 2-year
He had that
run
one
where
great year. Yeah,
he was regarded the way that McCaffrey's regarded. Like it sounds crazy, but he
wow.
was the dual threat guy. No, he
Yeah. The
did. He
difference is
had
McCaffrey has
he had
years
a
and years
thousand
of
yards rushing. No, I get that, but I'm saying
yeah.
after that season, they
Yeah, that's
were talked about in a similar tier. They were, and then
no,
Johnson had the injuries and fell off super. McCaffrey's obviously done it for way longer, but I'm saying at that point in time,
right.
those two guys were like the faces of that position.
He was a
And
beast. He was a beast.
his contract at that point though was just such a sunken cost. You expected them to have to, you know, it was such a crazy trade. But this Luka trade, there's never been anything like it. So
No, no. Because every other like people have compared it to the Kareem trade in the mid 70s, but he asked out. All the other
yeah,
major departures of these stars have been when they ask out or like something crazy happen like off the court like like some criminal type stuff like it's so unprecedented, especially after they
right.
made the finals last year. Like I still can't like I
Well,
get
that
why
was
like
my
I get
first
that he probably
impression.
is a huge pain in the ass behind the scenes. Like I don't deny that. Like Luke like Luka's not my favorite player in the NBA at all. Like he's kind of a bitch on the court, but he just dragged his team to the NBA finals last year. You can't really argue with
Yeah.
the results. Like
And it seemed like that team, I mean, that team was very well constructed around Luka and
yes,
Kyrie. Obviously, you have to be if you're going to get to the finals,
yeah,
make it out of the West. But that seems, my first impression was like he had to have asked out and people just didn't know, right? That's like the only reason they would have traded him. But
Doesn't seem
it
like it.
seems like he got maybe, the Mavericks GM is really, I think Nico Harrison's his name, has really come under fire for this deal. And I mean, it makes sense, but
And he's
you
like,
don't really know what's going
he's
on
made
behind
some
closed
good
doors.
moves,
I mean, yeah,
like up
they
until
built
this
a nice
move.
roster.
Yeah, up until this move, like the Kyrie trade, like that was a huge risk,
Hmm.
and it worked out. Like even if they don't
Yeah,
get any further, like him being the second best player on a team that made the finals, like it worked out. Getting Gafford and drafting Derek Lively last year, like they have a good,
PJ Washington
yeah.
has
Like there's a
been
reason
like,
why this year when they have AD and Christie and Martin, who they acquired, like
yeah,
they're not gonna like they're still just gonna be like a good team, but they're not gonna be a championship level team. And the thing that Harrison, like by trading Luca after he takes you to a finals, that means the only possible way this trade can be looked as a success is if they win a championship.
right.
That's it. That's the only thing. Like, and
And
there's
that's
a world where
probably at a certain point, you've put such a huge target on your back with this
yeah,
deal that like
you have
that's
to.
probably how you keep your job.
Well, and it's not even yeah, and it's not even like if you make the finals and lose, then fans will be like, okay, great, we could have done that with Luca
Right.
and have this future like this runway for 7 years with him because he's 25.
Yeah.
It is so like it's still
It's a crazy deal. And of
yeah,
course, it's the Lakers, and
I know.
the Lakers now have a young
I'm glad I
face.
don't hate the
Like,
Lakers, like just due to the fact that I didn't have a team growing up, but man, like it is, they get lucky so often.
yeah.
Uh,
No, they
he wasn't asking to go there either. It's just
no, they just and it happened like out of nowhere. He
yeah.
was
But
not even
I
floated,
believe
like,
that LeBron didn't know too,
no,
because
I
I don't
believe
think there's
nobody knew.
yeah.
Jason Kidd didn't know.
No, no, he's like in the press
Nobody
conference being
knew.
like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I didn't tell Jason Kidd," and he just has to sit there with like no reaction on his face. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
How does this
Harrison's like
happen?
cracking jokes and stuff, and
Dude,
Kidd's like,
Dallas fans are like,
they
Dallas,
were
like it's so
refunding.
crazy that well,
Yeah,
yeah, they
they
brought
were
the cost down.
refunding season tickets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's on the business side. It's a horrible move, and that's why there's a certain amount of Dallas fans who think that it's like the ownership group is gearing up for a move to Vegas, and you trade your
Wow.
star player just to piss off the fan base. I don't believe that because there's already been enough rumors of Vegas getting an expansion team, and the Dallas, like I think that's the fourth largest market in the country. So like if you're a pro sports team, why would you ever leave the Dallas Fort Worth area? I just don't under. Uh
Yeah.
so
And there's
it,
so much history there.
there's
I don't
well,
really
yeah.
buy that as much, especially with,
But
I
that's what
guess,
fans think when you do such a out of the box and crazy trade that makes no sense. It's just
no, it's
yeah,
true.
like
It's
nothing
true. And
else.
you can never predict what these owners are going to do, right? There was a
Right.
ton of history in Seattle. Sorry to pick the scab, Mark. There
No,
was a
it's
ton of
yeah.
history. It's probably a scar now. Uh, a ton of history in Seattle. There was a ton of history in San Diego. I think it's a travesty San Diego doesn't have a football team,
Charges. Yeah.
especially in a market like LA. I
Baltimore
pull
Colts.
pull LA residents and ask them how many football teams they have and see what percentage of them do not
Yeah.
answer two. I
Or they just say
guarantee that
Raiders.
percentage is higher. Yeah, that percentage is higher than you think, but
Right.
it was a business move. So,
Right. Yeah, no, it's crazy week in the world of sports, and it's probably a good thing for Bobby Hurley because a
yeah,
lot of the attention is off, especially in the
that's
Phoenix
one of your
market
top
too.
3 segues. If
And
I'm
well, yeah,
ranking
especially
Mark
in the Phoenix
segues,
market with all this Jimmy Butler potential trade that obviously didn't happen, and maybe Kevin Durant gets traded. Like that's what the all of the attention has been on locally. Will
yeah,
Bradley Beal, get rid of his trade clause, and
no,
what are they
that
going
dude's
to?
he's untradeable.
Dude, I would love to be
That is
Bradley.
one of the
I would love to be Bradley Beal right now. Holy shit.
for a businessman that is that is as accomplished as Matt Ishbia, And what's so crazy is when you're looking at the way this Suns team, one more departure, and then we'll get to ASU, I promise.
Yeah.
When
No,
you're
it's fine.
looking at the way this Suns team is constructed, like James Jones is the general manager, but it doesn't feel like he's the one influencing any of these moves
No.
because the
No.
Durant move went down the day after HBO was bought the
Yeah.
team or within
Yep.
days, whatever it was. So you see Ishbia's influence on this team, but for such a accomplished businessman to be so reckless with what he's acquired and what I get that the core the Suns had probably had an expiration date, but and it's so sad for Suns fans because the
Yeah.
big three era, right? This super team era
Big
led to
three.
rings for the Heat, for the Warriors, for it worked for teams, is what I'm trying to
Right.
say.
Right.
And then the Suns are like, they have an owner who's finally willing to like spend, and they're like, wow, we can do this. And then they get to be looked at as the end of the super team era. Like
Right.
it's not really a thing anymore. And
No.
the Suns are going to be looked to as the team that did it just a little too late, with an
Too
aging
late and too
Durant
old.
and yeah, an
Too
aging
late and too
Durant,
old.
the worst contract in the NBA with Bradley
It's
Beal. And
crazy.
if you got to feel bad for Bradley Beal, he didn't ask to be traded, or maybe he did, but you
Right.
didn't like pick Phoenix. It
It's
just
crazy that the Suns traded for him and that Washington gave him that contract too. Like, holy crap,
and
Wizards.
Ishbia just
Defense.
bailed the Wizards out of that deal.
Oh, totally.
That should
Yeah,
be one of those deals that you're like stuck to.
I know.
And now now the Suns are just yeah, no, it's the Suns are in a bad spot.
Yeah, I think
Um
Ishbia will get the Suns over the hump eventually just because, like, he cares so much and he's, like, a
yeah, no,
competitive,
that's a
like,
great and
nut
that is
job.
polar opposite from what they
But,
had.
like,
Yeah.
they just have to get through these next few years. Like, they need to, like, what their goal needs to be, like, cashing in on the final, like, because Booker's going to be good for a while. I mean, he's 28,
Yeah.
so like he's got probably like 6 years of being good. So like they need to cash in on like Booker's early 30s with good players, and he'll be like you can trust him in a playoff series too. So, all
Right.
right,
I think the way that this show has started is such a perfect representation of how Bobby Hurley has just ducked the ire. You brought it up, and
yeah,
we can't even get to Hurley because so much other stuff has happened, and that's exactly what's happened. Like you hit the nail on
we're
the
not
head
even
with that.
Sun. Neither of us are Suns fans. Like we
No,
just
no,
followed it.
it's just
Yeah,
we live in the market, so you see it
right, right.
firsthand. But
Well,
yeah,
it just, I mean, what has there been good to pay attention to with ASU men's basketball? It's like
I didn't
I was
watch.
at
Did you watch? Well, you
I
go
was
to the
at the
games, right?
game last night.
Yeah,
I was at the game last night, and I was at the game against U of A. I didn't get quite as good. Funny enough, being at the game, you didn't get quite as good. Like I didn't see BJ Freeman headbutt Love live, and then at the end of the game, everyone was just like, "What's going on? What's going? Like why?" So
were you behind the hoop where he got headbutted, or were you on the other
I
side?
was behind the hoop where he got headbutted, but I just wasn't paying attention at that point, like because the
No, I
game was
get it. I know you
like,
were firing off tweets.
oh.
That's what you do.
No, I fired off more yesterday because like
Oh, okay.
I can
Yeah,
well,
yesterday was bad.
Well,
Yesterday,
no,
no, but that's
I fired off more in terms of the actual result of the game based on the game against K-State, the loss. And before we even go forward, like I'm not blaming Jaden Quains for that loss. They shouldn't have even been in the position that he had to hit free throws for the win. Like obviously, like yes, you need to make at least one of those. Like I'm not gonna
yeah.
like he needs to play better and improve that part of his game. But like that game was such a shit show to get off to an 15-0 lead, 18-2 lead. And then you blow the game, but you you blow the game in the first half. You're down 30. You're down in the first. Like it was just, dude. The middle 20 minutes of that game, ASU just completely like it looked
Yeah.
like SDFC balls. They were just hucking threes, and
SDFC ball. I know that
they
well.
made like just enough of them to never totally get out of it. Although they were down by 13 points at one point in the second half,
But
and then
that's
they
kind of like,
come
yeah.
storming back, but they can't finish. And to a Kansas State team that's not good. Like watching K State, it like losing to U of A and Iowa State, both of those games had similar feels where like ASU had, whatever, 30 minutes that they could compete with them, 35 minutes, whatever it is. Like they could compete with them for more than half of the game, but then eventually like the other team would pull away. But those are like good. Like we see that U of A is just a good team. Like Iowa State, yeah, they've had some bad losses recently, but they're a good team. And you kind of saw that. You saw it for a half against Kansas, right? But losing to Kansas State, like with your back up against the wall after an embarrassing finish to that U of A game, and
With
you lose
everyone
that,
back too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
everyone but Sean Phillips,
Okay.
but they didn't like they have another ejection from Adam Miller, who I mean played well against U of A, and he handled himself really well in the final thing against U of A, but
Yeah. I
he
wasn't
he got
Tony
an
Padilla
ejection
the ref.
yesterday, and yeah, it's just like this
Wasn't
just
Tony
feels
Padilla
over. Bobby
the
Air feels
ref?
over. Yeah, I didn't see what happened yesterday either with Miller.
No, but I'm saying I think I saw Tony Padilla was the ref. That
Oh
dude,
yeah,
that guy will toss you for breathing. Like, I don't know. I didn't watch it. I don't know what Adam Miller did. Maybe he was, and that's the point I was gonna
it's like
make
who
is like
cares at this point?
I can't even watch the team anymore. Like I have
No,
no desire
no.
to watch this team play basketball, and clearly nobody else does because nobody is at these games anymore. Like you hit the nail on the head with like the era feels over because this is as low as it's been, I think. And I don't, if that's
Uh,
recency bias, let me know. But like, I don't remember because I think
in terms of the
anytime you have,
context of everything,
no, but
yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say.
right.
Anytime you have, and we were kind of talking about this earlier with, those Eagles teams, but anytime you have expectations and not only that, but like the potential that this
Yes,
ASU team had under Bobby, and you produce same old with the same old lowlights, the same old, just like what's crazy is when you watch other teams play, right? When you watch other college basketball teams play, there are moments where coaches are talking to their players and like trying to direct their players. Bobby is looking at the officials for probably 80% of the games that he
dude,
coaches.
I know.
It's his energy throughout the game, at least when I'm watching, and I'm not in these huddles, I'm not on the bench, I don't know, but his energy and his inability rather to control his players control their emotions better than he does. Like, and
Right.
I get it, the
But even then,
classic
it still filters
fiery,
down to them. Like it
right,
still
and
does. Like BJ Freeman, the headbutt against Caleb Love, like it wasn't egregious and it wasn't like super violent, but it was still a clear headbutt.
yeah,
Like it was like you can't like that is a headbutt. It's not like the most vicious headbutt of all time, but
right,
like that filters down. And like I was mentioning this to Connor and Tonis at the game yesterday. Like if way more people cared, like there would be a push from like the fan base or other people to like suspend BJ Freeman for that game yesterday. And there's like, but it's like it's not going to happen because like one, like this game yesterday against K State, like they needed to win that game. So,
yeah,
and two, not enough people care. So, I will say that the crowd at the game yesterday was more than I thought. It
that's
was
good.
it was a pretty respectable crowd for a bad Kansas State team on a Tuesday night. Uh, and the U of A crowd, I mean that was a pretty solid crowd too. So the only bad crowd I would say was that the Iowa State game. That was pretty bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was reading that they kind of took it over, the Iowa State fans, but
Yeah, and like
I yeah,
that's one of those things where like Iowa State has a bunch of fans who live here already, right? They it's a perfect like trip to make because you're going to ASU and U of A few days after. So like it's a perfect trip to make if you're a fan.
mhm,
And like to their credit, they have a great basketball fan base and their basketball team's having like one of the best years in their program history. So like it all when you and ASU like even at that point, it just felt like everyone knew what was going to happen.
yeah,
Like once this team the BYU game, whatever, like at the end of the year in 24, like, okay, whatever. And then you rebound to Colorado. You losing at Kansas was concerning, but it's Kansas. And then you lose to Baylor. Like the Baylor UCF Cincinnati losing streak stretch. I feel like that's really where everything kind of settled in. Is like, okay, this is the same stuff. It's going to be the same type of season, and maybe we'll pick off one of these upsets. And we, picked off at West Virginia. So I don't know, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's the
No,
same. It's the
it's
same crap. And I mean, how Bobby handled the end of the game against U of A was embarrassing. It was
yeah,
embarrassing.
he looked very goofy in that
That's
entire
that's a
thing.
very
I don't
charitable
know.
way to describe it.
Yeah, it just like, man, what are you doing? You're a grown man. Like,
Dude.
what are you doing?
And to call out
That's how
Caleb
I
Love,
used to act when like my pickup basketball team would lose to randoms, like storm
can't
out of the
confirm.
gym.
Can't
And I
confirm.
yeah, and I
You
had
were
a
not the only
bad
one,
attitude.
Colton. You were not
And
the
I
only
had a
one.
bad attitude,
You
Mark.
were not the only one who
Um,
had those behaviors.
but I also wasn't a Division 1
50-year-old. Yeah.
basketball coach. Like,
Yeah.
it is just, and it happened, I can't remember what game it was off the top of my head last year, but maybe it was the UCLA game, actually. I think it was, where he got teed up, and then one of his players got teed up,
Oh, yes.
and they went from being up 2 to
Yes.
down 2,
Yep.
and then
It was a
something it just,
four straight
but
UCLA
he
free throws.
does
Yeah.
that so consistently and costs
Yes.
this team opportunities with the way that he acts and the way that he conducts himself at times. And like, he's like ripping off the tie as if like, oh, this is going to flip the switch. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, and I want to revisit, because I know on the last episode I was like, I don't see how they do it. The Arizona game is inconsequential, but I was also very outspoken in my belief that Kansas State was a must win, and this would be the
Yep.
stretch that
Yeah.
dictates this season. And you blow an 18-2 lead at home against a team that you were more than capable. This feels like, when we were talking about Bobby Hurley returning to this team, we said barring a whatever it was, a collapse, and maybe this is the start of a collapse, but we can't necessarily say that yet.
Right.
Barring whatever this was,
Yeah.
then he probably wouldn't be back. And I think we're watching what is, it feels like he's kind of lost the team a little bit. He
Yeah.
said it in his press conference too. He doesn't know how to get through to them, and I feel like he's in over his head a little bit. Like,
It
he's
does.
got all of
It
this
feels like
talent now.
everything is. It feels like everything is kind of just stacking up. It's like the pressure
Mhm.
of 10 years, and like he knew going into this year that this was going to be a very big year for him. Like,
Yeah,
and it's
and
not going well.
he has not
They've
risen to that
and like
occasion at all.
yeah, and the fact that like this is a talented team, you can tell watching this. It's not like when you're watching these games, like even the games they lose, maybe the team is a little more talented, but it's not like it's not crazy. It's not like they look like a legitimate team, but it just
Yeah.
doesn't come together. And
And I remember texting you in jest saying like they just have to survive the 5-minute mark against U
right,
of A. And it just, that's how it feels. They just crumble. They
yeah,
don't just, basketball, obviously teams are going to go on runs, but this team does not stop runs. Like, this team
no,
does not respond. When the runs happen, they are
no,
done. That's it.
yeah,
And that's how it feels, Like, sometimes they'll battle back, but there are positions where if they could just respond and like stop the bleeding before Kansas, erases an 18-2
I
lead,
know.
like,
It's
you don't have to battle back, but they crumble. They crumble. And that is a result, I think, of the way that Bobby has coached this team. and the way that he has sort of lost this team.
Right. Yeah.
So
No, and I mean, ASU entered the game against K-State like on the last four or the first four out. Many bubble predictions. It's crazy that they were even at that point. Um,
yeah,
I mean, this is the benefit of playing in the Big 12. The downside is it's average opponent is more difficult, but upside is you get way more grace. So they're not eliminated from the tournament yet, but it feels like it. And I'm kind of glad they lost to Kansas State
yeah,
on Tuesday. I'm kind of glad. Because if they had won that game, like let's just say Quains makes both the free throws and they win the game, they'd be 13-9, and we'd just be sitting there like, okay, like they're still. We'd just be
they
having the
survived
conversation.
another
Yeah, they're
one.
still
Yeah,
alive, I guess, but you can't really be confident in the team. And now, like
they're just treading water.
now I'm very glad. Like I don't have to worry about the game against Oklahoma State. You know, I don't have to worry about finding the ESPN Plus whatever way to log into that. Like it's off my mind. Like we're just running out the string here. Like, and I'm
Yeah,
just hoping to I don't know. I was thinking this the other day. The team 2 years ago with the Cambridge brothers, Warren Washington, Nunez, Frankie Collins. I think I'm forgetting a few. Duke Brennan, DJ Horn. It was a good team. I feel like that team is about as talented as this team, maybe a little bit more talented, but not by a lot. And they pretty much the reason why that team made a tournament is because Cambridge hit a 3/4 court shot against U of A. And that's probably what got them over the edge. They make the tournament. They beat the crap out of Nevada in the play-in game, which that feels like the highlight of the Bobby Hurley era, the peak. And they lose to TCU, tough loss. But that game just kind of kept kind of restarted the clock for Bobby. And I don't want a repeat of that this year.
yeah.
Because
Like he
what
does just
happens?
enough at the end.
Yeah, because they are not eliminated. Like I know it feels like they're eliminated. Conceivably they could win 3 of their next 4, right? I don't think that's going to happen, but conceivably, it sounds crazy saying that, but maybe conceivably they win the next 3 of the 4 just by some of the luck going their way. Like they've been in enough close games where that's a reasonable thing to assume. And they would be 15-11, and based on what grace the Big 12 gets, like then you're kind of still alive. And I'll be honest, like if they do that, I'll probably be like, oh, like I still want them to win. Like I want them to win these games. I wasn't rooting against them at the game yesterday, but I also I was just laughing for lots of the game. Like it was
Yeah,
like
I don't think we'll ever. It's never rooting against them. It's more like I would describe it as apathy.
yeah,
You
oh
know,
yeah,
when you're watching a team that like there's nothing there. It's
right,
like
right.
it, there's no
That's a good
what's
way
the
to put it.
ceiling here? Like
Yeah.
what's the ceiling here, right? Making the tournament, which is cool, but it's like there's
I'd
no
say winning a
investment.
tournament game, but again, that would require so many things going right for you.
Yeah, I would say
Nothing more. Like there's no,
yeah.
and even then, like I just don't think they're going to get in the tournament. So
No.
they'll tease us. They'll tease us for sure. Like they are not 10-12. They're 12-10, which isn't great. But yeah, and they can't. The free throws continue to be a huge issue. Like it's not just Quaintance who's missing free throws. It's not just Sean Phillips who's missing free throws. Like there's a lot of times when one of your guards or Jihad usually makes his, but like someone will miss free throws from the backcourt in a given game. And so, yeah, this when you couple and going back to the end of the U of A game, I can understand like the rationale to get guys off the court. He should have shook hands with Tommy Lloyd. It's all about just
Right.
for the optics. I understand his rationale wanting to prevent a fight, but then to go into the post-game press conference and be like, "Oh, I'm not going to vote for Caleb Love for all Big 12." Like, Dude, that's such a bitch move. Like I
Yeah,
get that Caleb Love is like
it's very pouty. It's very
it's
pouty.
so pouty when you're double his age, over double his age. And I get that Caleb Love is like kind of a douchebag. Like it seems like when you watch, like whatever.
Yeah.
Like, but it's still like he's a college player. Like this is what they do. Like he's, it's a rivalry game. I can't believe I'm defending a freaking U of A player, but that's the position I'm in when Bobby, like he's whatever how old he is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make sure not to vote for him. It's like, dude, you just got like
Also, it's a
pants
single vote. Like,
by your rival. Oh my
why does he
god.
think that single vote? I don't know. Maybe it's
I'm
the swing
just
vote or something.
but yeah, but to kind of tie that in with the loss to Kansas State is it's like now the excuses are just gone. From people like us, we've defended Hurley. Like we've been way more uh supportive of Hurley than maybe your average ASU fan. I don't know, but there've been negative voices, and we wouldn't even disagree with them. It's just like
Right.
it was just like
I
yeah,
think
like
we were.
it's
Yeah.
tough, but so I
I
mean
think we
now
were more optimistic because of
yeah,
what we've seen this team do at the end of seasons in the past.
which
But
could still
that,
happen, but yeah,
but typically
it's not going
in
to.
those runs, there were ebbs and flows. Right now,
Right.
we're just in ebbs. Like, is ebbs the bad one? Flows is good. Ebbs
I
is
don't think
bad.
ebbs and
Yeah.
flows are necessarily good or bad. So I think it's
Okay, so peaks and valleys,
peaks and valleys. Yeah,
right?
there we go.
But
It's all valley.
we're only in the valley. There has
We
been
are in the
zero
valley,
peak.
literally and figuratively. So
The peak
yeah,
is what, West Virginia?
has to
I
be.
guess
Yeah,
our Acrisure Classic title.
yeah. Actually,
Like,
probably that.
yeah,
But
but we've
it's
had two peaks,
the
and
valleys are
one is
bad.
more of a hill. One is more
Yeah,
of a hill.
the valleys are bad, and the way you're going to the valleys, like the Iowa State loss, you have a lead, you blow it. U of A, like you just kind of melt down emotionally in that game, and just like
That's what you can rely on this team to do, is crumble in some way.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's the one thing that they consistently do well, is fall apart in some capacity.
I
Like,
know.
if you're gonna bet on anything, leverage their ability to crumble whenever you see the window. That
And
would
it's
be
tough
that
because
would be
like
my advice.
I know it's tough. It's just I feel like if they had this, there have been other years where like it didn't feel like the coach was that big of a deal. The team just wasn't that good. Like honestly, last year and some of the years right after the pandemic or the early Bobby years, right? Like that team, whole different era, no transfer portal or anything. This year, I look at this team and I'm like, yeah, like they need to have a different coach. Like this team would be better because you have six guys basically who are averaging double figures. Quains is at 9.8 points per game. You know, it and like Sinan is kind of fallen back a little bit, but honestly, like I just think some of that is just natural regression. He was shooting so well. I think by the end of the
Yeah.
year he'll improve on that, and maybe that'll be
And
the difference in some of these
he
games.
also
So
missed a ton of time, so
he did exactly. So like I don't blame it. I don't blame it this on the players at all. Like that's the thing. Like maybe I
no.
should, but it's because the player like we've seen this exact same show before from Hurley. So it's like why would I blame the players?
I think
So
I saw that in the first half of that Kansas State game, 32, or it with throughout some stretch, 32 of ASU's field goal attempts, or of 30 of their 32 field goal attempts, 25 were 3-point shots.
yeah. No, it
This
was
team, they do
ridiculous.
not shoot the three ball well enough to shoot it at that high of a volume.
Well, yeah. I mean, and you had Quaintance. Quaintance took 3 threes, and none of them were like end of the shot clock type deals. Like
Oh my
it
god,
was
yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah. Okay. So they 12 of 37 from 3-point, 32.4%. And the only
Shannon, one
one,
of
Adam
five.
Miller went 2 for 4. Jihad went 3 for 7. Other than that, everyone, you got a few 1 for 5s, 0 for 3
Just
from
throwing
Quaintance.
them
That's
up,
the one.
man.
It's just
Just
like,
throwing them up.
how,
Yeah, what are you doing?
yeah,
One
like
of
I'm much more
7
upset at
from the
Quaintance for
field.
it's bad. Yeah, I mean, like he didn't
He
play
had a
well,
rough
but
game, but he's 17 and he's been one of the
offense,
best players on this team.
yeah, No.
It's not his fault.
I'm more upset at him that
I'm
he was taking 3 threes than he missed the 2 free throws at the end, honestly. Like,
yeah.
uh, I don't know.
No,
So, I
it's
mean,
wild, man.
if you're, if you're Graham Rossini, you didn't want this past 2-game stretch to happen. You wanted a split in one of those games because then, there's still 9 games left. Oh, that feels awful.
And
Um,
4 of the 9 are against currently
ranked
ranked
teams.
teams.
Yeah. Add in BYU,
And
who's better than you. So that's 5
and
of the 9.
2 teams that have already beaten you.
Yeah, man, it's
So,
not good. It's not good.
what is that? 4 plus 6. 6 of the 9. Do not comment on that, Mark. 6 of the 9 are against either ranked teams or teams you have already lost to this season.
Yep. None of these games
Uh,
are, and all the bad teams that you play too. Other than what's TCU at?
well, Kansas State was supposed to be a bad team.
Yeah, exactly.
They're near the bottom of the
I
conference.
know, dude. It's brutal, man. And the other thing is like I don't even look at the Big 12 and be like, oh, like we can't like this team is not like under talented compared to the teams that it's played. Like I saw it last night.
Right.
Like it's
There's
so
not a huge disparity.
it's just bad coaching. And like it's been 10 years. It's been 10 years. Like at some point you have to break through a little bit more than what's happened here. And uh Zach Schwartz on Twitter, he did a whole thing about basically comparing him to all the other ASU coaches and like it's basically the same as Herb Sendek and some of the other guys, like in terms of winning percentage and everything, factored in. And so it's just,
Yeah.
what are we holding on to? What are we holding on to? There's nothing to hold on to. Barring spare, like other than them kind of somehow making the tournament and going on a run, it's over. And it's a clear breakup too. Like his kid, like is a senior, so like it's a clear, like easy transition off that. Not that that should play a big factor in their decision.
And 10 years is a long time, man.
Yeah, it's a
That's a
long
good
time.
run.
It's
That's
a
a
good
good
run.
run.
It's not like it's not like his tenure is like embarrassing. There's
Yeah.
been enough success in there. He'll probably finish above 500. I mean, I don't know what his win-loss record is, but it's done, man. It's
Yeah.
there's nothing left. I don't want I'm just I think if you're defending Bobby Hurley at this point as an ASU fan, you're just sunshine pumping. You're just
Right.
there's no
Even the
like
most optimistic need to come around.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Go get
nothing.
Rich Pitino from New Mexico, man. That dude's a
Richard Pitino.
stud. That guy's good, man.
The problem is like
New Mexico's probably a better job than ASU
yeah,
right now.
yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing that we like. I'm like, and that's why I was against firing him for a bit because it's like but now like ASU is just in a better overall position. Like their stability in which conference they're in. Big 12 is
Yeah.
at least a good basketball conference. So you can sell being in the Big 12. You have Rossini's in there locked in as AD. Like things are more settled in the athletic department.
Yeah.
NIL is less of an issue than it was. Like this family, the Hobbs family. Like I doubt they're just going to stop donating to NIL because Bobby's gone. I don't know. Maybe they will.
It might lead to a bit of an increase.
Yeah, that's true. That I'm sure if you're some of the boosters, you're sick of seeing
the same old.
just a 3-point shooting contest for college kids in a game.
And
so
not making the shots.
Yeah, you're just like you probably won't be able to poach from like another high major school, but just roll the dice on someone from the Mountain West or a lower major or whatever. Like
Mountain West
maybe,
is in a bit of flux right now too,
yeah,
though.
and maybe like some of their players will transfer up to ASU and they already have some chemistry and like it's
I think I'm excited for a fresh start.
I'm very excited for a fresh start. Like
I've it's hard to sort of sum up how I've felt about this era, but it's exactly how I'm feeling right now predominantly. Like it's just been so
Yeah.
much of this. Watching a guy who
Yeah.
I want to see somebody coach. Like I just all he does is scream. Like that's how it feels. And maybe I'm just like way too low on him at this point, but I don't know, man.
No, I mean, it's not like the way they've played recently is like proving you wrong, you know.
Yeah.
So,
It's just yeah, pretty
uh,
annoying.
yeah, I'm just done with it. Yeah, it's just the juice isn't worth the squeeze. I don't think of his. I like, I'm already eulogizing him here, but I like if the season projects how it's gonna go. Like, I don't think of him as some like awful coach in the history of like
No.
ASU sports, but it's over. Like that doesn't mean you just get to go on forever. Even at a bad basketball school like ASU, like we admit that all the time, and that's again one of the reasons why I was okay with keeping him for a bit because you're not going to be able to poach someone, but yeah, it's. I mean, there's just I don't know. I just feel like there's no one left that's really defending him either. Like aside for like a
Yeah.
few people and maybe some people like affiliated with the athletic department, but like there's
I
not
feel like
any
at this
not
point
support.
I would be disappointed if there wasn't a new coach next year.
Yeah, no, I agree,
That's how I feel
and
because
that's why like
this was the
making the
year. This was
tournament
the
like who
year.
cares?
Show us something, and he
Yeah,
has showed us nothing.
negative nothing.
Yes.
Yes, no, and like what's the point of making the tournament at this point? You know,
Right.
like it's not you're just gonna lose. Like it's not gonna mean anything. So yeah, I mean that we still have 9 more games. It's just brutal. It's gonna be ugly,
I
man.
might
It's
pop
gonna
onto the ESPN app and check a score here or there, but I don't plan on watching any of those
well,
games.
you're in luck because 1, 2, 5 of these games are on ESPN Plus.
I never said I'd watch them, Mark. I said I would pop on and look at the score to
No, I
see,
know. That's my
you know.
point. Like you won't even. It's not like you won't even have to try to watch it.
Oh, I
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. I won't accidentally stumble upon a game, is what
yeah.
you're
They're
telling
they're
me.
obscure
Okay.
anyway.
Well, that's
So
good news. Thank you,
it
Mark.
is good. Avert
Yeah.
your eyes. Okay, I want to touch on ASU's other, well, not other winter team, but other relevant big team sport right now, and that being ASU men's hockey. Uh, Not adding anything to the stage with them because whenever that happens, my computer crashes. So we won't be doing that. But they sweep Miami of Ohio over the weekend. That improves them to 16 9-1 overall. They're tied with Western Michigan for 34 points in the NCHC, number 12 in the USCHO rankings. Their forward Ryan Kerwin was named forward of the month in the NCHC, and it looks like they're going to make the tournament. I've looked at a college hockey bracketology, much better than looking at the men's basketball bracketology and seeing ASU not in it. In college hockey, they're one of the last teams in, or one of the 4 seeds. So, we don't. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm watching all the games. I won't be at the 2-game series on Friday and Saturday against Denver, which big series for ASU, even if they can split that. But it's really nice for one, to see this hockey program kind of just start to crest and kind of break through a little bit. And it's just another, like you have volleyball winning the conference championship, you have football winning conference championship. Hockey has a chance to win the conference championship and is at the worst, like it's competing for a conference championship. And so it's kind of cool just how this program is kind of moving into form, rounding into form, and it is like it's taking some of the pressure off basketball because it's nice to have another successful sport going on.
Right. And it's so cool. I got to cover the hockey team in their first year as a
Right.
NCAA Division 1 team, right? And it's so cool to see that journey from where it started to where it's at now. I know, even Tyler's their radio guy now, which is awesome because he was right there too at the ground level. So it's really like a grassroots program that was built out of thin air, a donation that they never expected to see, So it is really cool to see where they're at now. Obviously, they joined the NCHC, and get into a conference. And I know that was a big reason why last year they were at the disadvantage when it came to the tournament. So
they're in Alaska,
not only
getting in fights in Fairbanks.
Yeah. So not only like making that jump to a conference, but finding success in a conference. It's with the departure of the Coyotes, it's been such an awesome team to have. And I think a lot of people have embraced ASU hockey because of the NHL's departure as well, which has been awesome. So
for sure, a lot of Coyotes fans have migrated to ASU, and it's
such
really
a nice
cool,
facility too.
It's great for it's a great facility. Credit to Ray Anderson for facilitating that.
And credit to Greg Powers too, man. That guy has been there again from the very beginning. You can work through.
Looks the exact same.
Yeah. Great guy too. Always super nice with student media, and because he was a journalism guy himself. So he was always so gracious. It's one of those programs that you look at and you're like, you're glad to see them having the success that they are, and you're seeing patience pay off too, right? You're seeing this leap to the NCAA ranks was not going to be an instant success. But they have really played the long game, and you're seeing that pay dividends now, and you're seeing it pay dividends with guys that have been there from the very beginning. So that's always cool to see too. And Arizona State being a hockey contender wasn't necessarily anybody's surefire lock in any capacity. So it's awesome to see, and hopefully we're watching some playoff hockey, college hockey.
That would be awesome.
They do have a national TV game. I don't know if I've missed it. I saw it when I was watching.
Well, they've been on CBS Sports
basketball.
Network. Yeah. Here, let me look it up. But no, dude, I would love to go.
Maybe it is CBS Sports Network. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's their Denver game, because don't they have Denver coming up
this weekend? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that game will be on CBS Sports Network, which is sweet.
No, and well, it is cool that for Powers, this was a big year for him, because they didn't make it last year. They hadn't had a bunch of success. I don't think he was on the hot seat or anything, but you didn't want to go into the NCHC and just look like you don't belong.
Outmatched.
And that's obviously outmatched. And that's
you didn't want to look like the basketball team.
Well, that's the frustrating thing about the basketball team is it's not even that they totally look outmatched. It's they play outmatched, and that anyway.
That's a good point.
But with hockey, I would love to go to an ASU hockey playoff game, like a tournament game at some point. I won't be able to.
Would they ever? They wouldn't be able to host, but
no, I think what they do is they just have I was reading the article today, and this year it's in Manchester, New Hampshire, Fargo, Allentown, Pennsylvania, and Toledo, Ohio. So most of the sites are all in the Midwest.
Oh, okay. So it's neutral.
Midwest or East Coast. So yeah, it's like the basketball tournament.
Okay. But ASU Frozen 4, book it.
Yeah, but that would be so cool. It's Friday night, CBS Sports Network against Denver. And then at Minnesota Duluth on 14th and 15th. That's a really big, that's a historic hockey.
Is that on TV too?
No, it's not. That's in Minnesota. I think it's So, but against Western Michigan, February 21st, and Western Michigan right now they're tied with them in the NCHC standings. That game will be on Fox Sports here in Arizona, Fox Channel 10. So that's pretty cool that you get that as well. And so, ASU hockey is never going to be at the level. It's probably never going to break through in a huge way, but if you go on a little run, like I really want to see just, kind of conceptually, like what would happen if ASU hockey makes it to like the Frozen Four? Like how would people react? What kind of, because there's a lot of like there are a lot of, ex Coyotes fans in the Valley still.
Yeah. And I
And
think
there's
oh,
enough
sorry, go ahead.
ASU people that like that would generate some buzz. And another thing
Yeah.
that like if ASU hockey play like they're still like, even though the NCHC has a lot of kind of obscure schools in the big scope of college athletics, like Miami of Ohio, Western Michigan, Denver, Colorado College, all the, Omaha, like even though it's a good league, like if you're in the NCAA tournament, you make it to the Frozen Four, that means you can play in like Michigan, University of Minnesota hockey. You might play Boston College,
Right.
like a school like a Providence. Like you can play like notable Big Ten or let's just say Big East schools that like that would raise the cachet of the game versus if you were playing, like a Quinnipiac or something. Like even though that team may be just as good, but or
Yeah.
like maybe an Ivy League school or something. Like you'll play against like big brand names, and so like Michigan State is the number 2 team this year, and
Yeah.
so like that kind of adds to it. Um,
Yeah. And I've
if
always, since when this first happened, when they first made the leap, the big
right,
sales pitch was always, where else in the country can you walk to practice in your flip-flops and stuff? And it's like there is inherently a very
yes,
unique recruiting angle here for ASU hockey, and there has been for, I mean, since this team was established, since this team made the leap.
yeah,
Um, so you have that, right? You have that benefit. If you can parlay that with success and um recognition and getting your people seeing you play and recruits seeing you play, there are a lot of pieces here for this to for ASU hockey to become a desirable
yeah.
destination for recruits. And it could
They've
grow up
recruited
and
pretty
or
well
grow
already.
into something. Yeah, they have. That's what I'm saying is this team isn't where it's at without solid recruits and solid player development too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot to be excited about with ASU hockey, just like there's a lot to be excited about with ASU football, because I'm sure you want to get to that.
Oh,
I'm taking
yeah,
a play out of your book here, Mark.
right. Out of my podcast playbook.
There
Uh,
you go.
well, it's
Available on
funny, like
Amazon.
as we wrap up with ASU hockey, I did want to like this when we had Paley on last year, we mentioned like ASU hockey is of all the major sports, team sports, I should say, excluding like golf or swimming. Um, it is I feel like it remains the most likely to actually win a national championship in the near future. It's probably either them or football, and which is crazy to say. Now, football, it would take a lot, and it would probably have to happen like this year. You have a window, but then who knows in the future? And even then, this year, like it's still like
Yeah.
it would still be incredibly difficult. But with hockey, the game presents itself like you see in the NHL playoffs. There's always upsets. There's some of that same element in the NCAA hockey tournament. Like Minnesota has been upset a lot, and they've had some really good teams. So there's a window for you to get in, and you have the unique recruiting advantage, and you have the support behind it too. It's not like you have. It's not like ASU hockey. Like there's so much thoughtfulness that has gone into creating what this has become. They didn't build an arena that's too big. They kind of got lucky with the Coyotes leaving. I know that uh, like that's kind of an unfortunate reality, but they are now the biggest show in town in terms of hockey. There is no, if you are a hockey fan in Arizona, you're like, okay, unless I want to drive to Vegas or to Anaheim or whatever, or to Salt Lake City, uh, then, I need to go to Mullet Arena and watch ASU hockey play Colorado College or whomever it may be. And no other ASU sport or major sport can say that. So there is potential for it to grow, and it's just a fun environment too. Like that's the other thing. So it's and the student section, like you don't always get the students in the basketball arena, partially just because of the size of the arena, but in hockey, there's a good environment. It doesn't feel super old and decrepit like Desert Financial Arena. So anyway, on to football. Big 12 schedule came out on Tuesday. ASU's 2025 schedule has been announced. I'm pulling it up to my screen right now. We knew we knew the teams that ASU was going to play, but we did not know the order. And I think the order is pretty solid for ASU football. There's maybe only a few things I would change, but what kind of stuck out to you about the ASU football schedule, Colton?
Yeah, just looking at this real quick. You tuck BYU, which is a little unfortunate. Definitely wanted to play those guys again. The people's champs of the Big 12, of course. Everybody knows them well. But truthfully, they're a strong team, so that probably
And we'd
favors
have to play them
ASU a
in
little
Provo
bit.
too. Like
Yeah, so that I
that's
mean, truthfully, probably favors ASU a little bit.
yeah.
Iowa State, early November, you probably don't get them at the coldest, right? Iowa's the
Yeah.
coldest that it
When
has
I
to
first saw
offer, but
November,
you do get Boulder, so
yeah, Boulder and November 22nd. So that is at Colorado is the only game where you can look at the schedule ahead of time and be like, that game will 100% be cold. You know. Now we said that about
yeah,
the K-State game this past year, and it was like 50s. So thank you, global warming, for making it easier on ASU when we were at K-State. I mean that probably factored in a slight bit. Anyway, but like we don't know what the weather will actually be like. But I mean, Colorado, late November, like it's gonna be cold. But you're right, at Iowa State on the first, that game could be cold. It probably won't be cold. The first, like I don't know, it'll probably just be like 50 degrees, chill in the air. Just a picturesque fall day, honestly. And that's
yeah,
should be a great environment. Like if you're an ASU fan, I think at Iowa State would be a fantastic game to go to because the team's going to be good, right? They return their running backs. Matt Campbell's a good coach. It's a great like college like tailgate environment, like all that. Cool fans for the most part. So like, and it's just a totally different experience too. Like a lot of these Texas schools, it's very similar. Oklahoma, like you're in the Midwest. Uh, So that would be a fun game to go to. And then, what do you think about the early start of the schedule? They have 5 straight games in a row, 2 road games mixed in there.
yeah. Well, I mean, it alternates. You got Mississippi State too. You go to Starkville for that. Then Baylor in Waco. That's a pretty tough start
Yeah,
to the Big 12 slate. Especially with Texas State is always going to be a tough team where they're at, and they're still in the Sun Belt, right? Or did they move? I can't
Sun Belt,
track all of this.
Sun Belt.
Okay,
They are in.
it's
Yeah,
hard to
there's a
track
chance
all
they
of this
move to the new
realignment.
Pac-12, but we'll see
Okay,
about that.
but
But
I
yeah,
mean, GJ Kinney does a great job down there, so they're always going to be
right.
a competitive team. But they come here, which is good, and then
They
you
lost
head
a
out
bunch
to
of
Baylor.
guys, including one of their O linemen to ASU. But like
Yeah,
McLeod is gone. Their like stud wide receivers gone. I think they're running
um,
backs at U of A, so like they probably won't be as talented. But yeah,
yeah. I do see. I like this stretch here in November. You kick off November with Iowa State, but then you get a bye
yep,
and you host West Virginia. You don't have to go back on the road until November 22nd at Colorado.
yep.
So that's a nice little stretch there too. You got back-to-back home games with Texas Tech and Houston. Um, I I obviously like seeing Houston on the schedule. We didn't get them last year.
Dude, I think
Um,
Houston is gonna. I'm glad we don't play them at Houston because I think they're gonna be. I think they're gonna be like a 7-5 type of team this year. They were a pain in the ass at the end of the year last year. Like they beat K
right,
State.
but getting them, that's what I'm saying.
Right, right,
Getting
right.
them here is
Yeah, for
favorable
sure.
because Texas Tech is going to be one of the toughest teams they
Same with
play, I
Texas
think.
Tech. Yeah.
Utah, we'll see how they bounce back.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
just going to be a really
obviously
tough
going
game.
to
That's yeah,
Rice Eccles is never easy. You do have a bye between TCU and
which is
Utah,
huge. That is
which is
so
really
big.
nice.
Yeah, because I don't think Utah will be like they're going to be better than they were last year. And
Oh,
they're
for
still like a
sure.
physical team no matter what. The
And
guy
that's
Devin
one of the
Dampier,
toughest that was one of the toughest places
yeah,
to play in the Pac-12.
yep,
It's
yep.
probably gonna be one of the toughest places to play in the Big 12, right?
I know.
That's Rice Eccles is a tough place to go. You get it early October. Again, we were talking about that with Iowa, the weather and all of that, but
Yeah.
that's a tough game, pretty early, your
No,
third
I
Big
was
12 game.
dreading I was dreading a late November trip to Salt Lake because
Yeah, and
like
all Saturdays too. All
yep, other
Saturdays
than
except for the
potentially the
Territorial Cup,
yep, and that's fine. Which I like that
which
because I
looks like
think
could be flexed.
yeah. But I
It
think
says,
that
yeah.
I think that playing on Thursday or Friday benefits the worst team, because
Mhm.
it's more likely for shenanigans to happen. And so
Right.
ASU just in terms of on paper is some would argue the best team in the league. Like they are a top contender in the league. And I think that I don't think they're gonna like. I don't think teams are gonna sneak up on them as much. Like I think that
No.
the only game I look at and be like, ooh, we could get snuck up on is actually Houston at home on the 25th because you play Texas Tech, who Texas Tech should probably be like pretty good this year. But it's so tough. Like it's so tough to judge how like good or bad like
Yeah, year to
Baylor will
year.
be. Like at first I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of worried about playing Baylor. I'm like who
And
knows
this year,
what
man, I
Baylor.
think we're just looking at like scheduling wins, right? Like the back-to-back home games
Yeah,
and the bye weeks where they are. I think it
right.
it broke really, really well for ASU this year in terms of who they play and when they play them, so to speak.
And where, yeah. But I guess
And
we know that
where exactly. So that's good. I think it's obviously a Big 12 schedule is always going to be a tough schedule because it is such a balanced league, right? And we saw
right.
that last year with BYU and Iowa State. It was a four team race until the last game of the season for Big 12 title game berths, right?
Right.
So, and you mentioned it, Houston will probably be improved. It's hard for them not to be given how low they were last year, but picked it up at the end. Utah is going to be improved. We'll see what happens with U of A, but I
Colorado is a ginormous question mark. Just I have
yeah,
no
you're
idea.
right. I don't know. I don't know what and it I mean it's February. We haven't even played the
Yeah.
Super Bowl yet. So it's like what are they going to look like without Shadur and Travis Hunter and
There's a
Shiloh and
there
whoever
is a
else?
good
But
chance that this 3-game stretch to close out the regular season, hosting West Virginia at Colorado and then hosting Arizona, like that could be a pretty soft ending to the season for ASU.
it's a very good
Like
point. Iowa
very
State though if it breaks favorably, Iowa State could be your last and they're not going to take anybody lightly, but
right.
Iowa State could be your last big test of the year.
Yes. Yeah, potentially,
Which
yeah.
is way different from what we saw last year. It was
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
a gauntlet at the end of the season outside of U of A. They were kind of the polar bear in Arlington, but um yeah, that run there at the end was just an absolute gauntlet. So
Yeah. Uh, and a thought I had is like, man, if Sam Levitt is as good as a lot of people think he could be this year, then the schedule game like it becomes irrelevant, honestly.
yeah,
Aside from like avoiding like playing at Utah in late November or whatever. If we were playing Iowa State like even in mid November, like
yeah. No,
aside
I
from those
think
like weather type things, like man,
yeah,
if Levitt's just good enough, like none of these teams will have a defense as good as Texas, you know,
no.
and
And this offense I think this offense will probably be the best in the Big 12, and this team should be the best team in the Big 12. Like I don't know at this point, given what they have accomplished and where they're at in their sort of progression, I don't see anybody on this schedule who should finish higher than ASU.
yeah,
So
none of these,
that's just
yeah,
how
it's
I
not
feel.
like, and it helps that you also avoid Kansas State too.
Yeah,
Um,
that's big.
Like
That's
because
big.
that's a pretty talented team for Big 12 standards. Maybe Avery Johnson takes a step forward.
Yeah.
So Avoiding both
Avoiding
them and
them in
BYU.
BYU. Yep.
Yeah. Who else do you avoid? There's
Trying to
obviously
think.
Cincinnati, whatever, UCF,
Yeah.
whatever, Oklahoma State, whatever. I
Cincinnati's,
mean, I guess Oklahoma State probably won't be.
Kansas.
Kansas, actually. Oh, that's a big one because they're going to
Yeah.
bounce back, dude. Because they got Daniels coming back. Leipold's a good coach. Like even when they were losing games, like it wasn't even. You could still see that they like are pretty well coached.
And they had a good run there at the end too.
No,
Like
I know. Yeah, they have so
they were the reason ASU got in. That win over
yeah,
BYU, that win over the People's Champs.
over BYU and Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Big
but
shout
also
out
yeah,
to
like
them.
as much as we joke about like BYU, like not playing BYU is still probably better than nothing. Like
They're a
now, I
great
mean,
team, but they made themselves the joke by saying what
yeah,
they said. That I just
it
want to
is
make
funny
that
that like
clear.
just looking at the schedule now, like it's kind of your games the 4 through 7. That looks like your most crucial stretch. If you go through at Baylor, hosting TCU, at Utah, and hosting Texas Tech at 3-1, you probably take that. Now, granted, if ASU is just clearly more talented than all those teams, then no, because I've kind of thought about this a little bit. Like this ASU team, there is an element of it feels kind of like a diet version of the Washington team that they had all these guys coming back, um, and that Washington team had a really good O line. That's where I draw the comparison because ASU has 4 or 5 offensive linemen coming back from a good O line. Like I don't think we can.
Yeah.
That's just such a big thing that they have in their back
Continuity.
pocket.
Yeah,
Yeah,
continuity across
both
the
your
board.
tackles returning. Like you only have to replace your center, and you'll probably just. It looks like they're just going to move in Ben Coleman, who was one of your best offensive linemen already. You bring in enough guys from the portal that you're not worried about one more spot. You have enough depth on your roster there. And so to
Yeah.
just be at a place with ASU football where the offensive line is just like not really an issue from like a big like I'm sure there will be games where they don't play that great, but like from a just big picture perspective, the offensive line just looks like it's such a strong pursuit. You have enough running backs. I mean, there's going to be talk about, oh, they got to replace Scattaboo. And there is some truth to that. Like none of these guys are going to be as good as Scat was last year, but it's not like every
And
single
Scat
run he
was
had
also,
was like
yeah,
breaking 5 tackles. Like he had some well blocked runs as well. And like other guy, like you bring in Udo, you bring in the 3 Brown running backs, last name, and you're just in good shape at that spot. And all 4 of those guys can play. And I didn't even mention Alton
right.
McCaskill. So it's just, I mean,
It'll probably be more, and who knows what we see out of Udo early, but I feel like that bell cow role, excuse me, that Scatabo took over, or Scatabo, I mean, I always
right.
have done that. I've always done that.
It's hard not to.
Yeah, that bell cow role is going to be distributed among a bunch of talented running backs, I think.
Yep.
And you've got, you said it, Jason Brown, Kyson Brown, Rayleigh Brown, Kanye Udo, Alton McCaskill. There's so many capable backs.
I know, dude.
So that's obviously everybody's biggest fear is like losing Scat, but they've got so many guys who are going to be able to step up and make an impact running the ball that I
Yeah.
don't think there's going to be much of a drop off in terms of their ability to lean on the running game and the efficiency of the running game.
Yeah, I agree. And it helps to have Levitt
Yep.
from a run game perspective and
It's
from
again, man, across the board continuity, like
yeah,
coaching staff, offensive line, quarterback, receivers. Obviously, they're
tight
bringing
end.
in a ton of new
Yeah,
receivers, but Jordan Tyson
defense.
still being there. Like defense, it's just, you said it, man. Like I don't understand. I don't see a scenario unless something goes catastrophically wrong where they're not right back in the same position they were in this year with a more favorable outlook than they had last year. In
Yeah,
terms of like that's what should happen, but that's again the weight of expectations can be heavy. So
yeah. Still too far out to go through game by game, but it's
yeah, it's a favorable schedule in
it is
February.
yeah, exactly. It's you're in good shape from schedule perspective. So do want to quickly touch on some recruiting stuff for ASU. They added a 4-star tight end in the 2026 class, Israel Briggs. They now are up to 16th in the 2026 class on 24/7 when you add in 4-star quarterback Jake Fetty or Fett. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I love that this exposure is like translating on the recruiting trail. And they had a bunch of guys in this past weekend. Just feels like that's trending up. And so good stuff. Any final thoughts,
sir.
Dodgson?
I think this is a very comprehensive episode.
Yes, that's right. The most anyone's, that's what, 10 solid minutes on ASU hockey?
Yeah, and we even went Super Bowl, we went NBA. Man, I don't know where else you're gonna get this level of hard-hitting sports coverage. Did you like my tweet, by the way?
It was good, yeah.
We're right on the cusp of national syndication.
A little self-deprecating.
I figured. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark. Did that make you sad, kind of?
A little bit.
Oh,
I'm kidding. Yeah. All right.
Are they still called tweets?
What?
Are they still called tweets? Or are they called something else now?
I don't know. What else? I think
Are they called musks?
Musks. Posts. I think it's just posts. So,
okay. That'll work for me, I guess.
In 2025. All right. Good talk. Go Devils. Please like and subscribe. Rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. Follow the College Huddle podcast network and all the great shows on said podcast network. And as always, go Sun Devils. Goodbye.